Michael Black.
Oh, Ted Notes.
And Bruce Grieve. Thank you. The board is here tonight to work together with all of you, property owners, architects, neighbors, and interested citizens, to continue the long tradition that allows Lake Forest residents and businesses to work together to preserve the qualities and the unique character that make Lake Forest a special community. We recognize the personal importance of each petitioner's request. Our goal is to respect the needs and desires of property owners while balancing the interests of the community as a whole to preserve and enhance its architectural character and landscape streetscapes. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Building Review Board, the types of projects that come before this board are those in which the property owners are requesting a variance to allow a home that is larger than permitted by code, are seeking a demolition permit and approval of a replacement structure, or otherwise involve issues that could not be fully resolved by city staff. It is important to note that over 95% of the building permits are issued by the city without the need of the Building Review Board. Thus, this board typically deals with the most challenging and sometimes controversial projects. The City of Lake Forest is committed to conducting open and fair meetings, and to achieve that goal, the board has adopted meeting procedures, and all parties will be provided an opportunity to speak. These procedures are outlined in the agendas available at the back of the room. This meeting is also broadcast on cable television. Speaking on behalf of the entire board and city staff, our objective is to provide a review process that is thorough, fair, and without unnecessary delay. The next order of business is the approval of minutes from the May 7th meeting. Has anybody ever had a chance to review those and have any comments, Emma?
Comments.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Do we have a move to approve?
I'll move to approve the meeting minutes.
Okay.
Second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Those meeting May 7th are approved. The next item actually was not overlooked. We have a special guest in the audience. Monica Artman Ruggles is here, and we want to take this opportunity to recognize Monica for her outstanding contributions to this board. For over 6 years, Monica was with us, and during her tenure, made many contributions. The sheer volume of work, she oversaw 150 petitions during that time frame for both commercial and residential projects here in the city. Some of the bigger items that she worked on for Lake Forest College, the Moore Hall and the Sports Center, and for the Lake Forest Academy, Ferry Halls, the Science Center, and the Athletic Complex. Some key signage and facade changes in town, the Conway Office Park, the Fresh Market, Crystal Point, etc. Monica is an architect by trade and really was a valued member of our board for some of the finer points of architecture, really did a great job. And so with that note, we want to thank Monica and recognize her for her outstanding contributions.
Speech.
Yeah, right.
And with Monica departing, Bruce Grieve is our latest member, and want to welcome Bruce to the board and
Thank you.
wish him well during his tenure. The next item on the agenda is a consideration of request for approval of a new single-family dwelling, including a site plan and associated landscape on a vacant lot located at 1101 Griffith Road. The owner is U.S. Shelter, LLC, and the representative John M. Sorensen, and also represented by Brad Corando, architect. Welcome.
I'm John, and I'm with U.S. Shelter Homes. We are the owner of 1101 Griffith. With me here is Scott Javor with Scott Javor and Associates Architecture. He's the architect for this particular project, as you're aware from last month. To briefly just recap everything we went over last month, the lot that we have purchased was subdivided before we purchased it. We are within all the criteria for the new proposed building, not requesting any setback variations, any size variations, or any variations of any nature. The existing site, as shown there, is still the same, 2,500 square feet approximately, with a front yard of approximately 60 feet. south side yard of about 136, a north side yard of about 141, and a rear of about 43 feet. Just to briefly recap, the homes directly to the north and south. The home to the north is a wider lot, so it gives it a slightly wider street presence, and the home to the south is closer in size to ours, a little more narrow. Those are immediately north and south of our lot. Not going through the rest of the neighborhood as we did last month. Just to hit some of the highlights on some of the changes, the original house we proposed last month was 2,265 square feet, which was within the allowable buildable area. The new revised home with the changes as requested by this board is 2,267, so within 2 feet, and again, that's still within the same allowable square footage. The original first floor is very close, again, second floor, third floor, all within several feet of the first plan. We changed some boxes, some bump outs, cleaned up some of the elevation, and that's why there's slight changes. The total height, nothing has changed. It's the same, 30 feet above grade, which is allowed. Next, exterior materials, nothing is proposed to have changed since last month. It's still cedar siding with a cedar siding, a lap siding, and then a shake shingle at the upper second story, Marvin integrity windows, composition shingle roof, and then masonry at the fireplace, so natural products for the most part. There had been a question last month about how far the homes are, the proposed new home is from its neighbors. The home to the north is approximately 30 feet 6 inches from the new proposed residence, so that's a substantial distance. And the home to the south is approximately 18 feet 11 inches from the new proposed residence. Here's a streetscape of what the proposed new plan would look like, new home. We feel it fits within the massing of the neighborhood. The home to the left or north is a little wider. It's a wider lot. There's nothing we could do about that. The home to the south right is narrower. Again, it's like ours. It's a narrower lot. And I'm going to turn it over to Scott to talk about the specific changes.
Thank you. The front elevation has been modified per your comments. We really, tried to listen to your comments at the last meeting and respond to them as thoroughly as possible. So what we've done is we eliminated the box bay that was in the living room down here. We eliminated this bump out extension of the first floor and second floor. We eliminated the extension of the little porch coming out over the steps, as well as 2 columns that used to be in front of the other 2 columns. So that's the front elevation in its modified form, modified and simplified form. The only other thing that changed, which you can really barely tell from here, is we also stepped the mass of the chimney back slightly and changed its breaking point from up here to down here. On the north elevation, it's very similar, but we did eliminate this step out of the front of the house, so that cleaned that up. At the same time, we lined up the windows, the living room and bedroom above, left the box bay in the stair. We took the box bay off the family room, which is this little bump out here. We took the canopy off the back of the house over the back door, so that simplified this area as well. On the back of the house, we again eliminated the box bay in the family room and the little canopy over the back door. And then on the north side of the house, there had been questions about these windows with the panels below the actual raised transoms in the kitchen. So we eliminated the panels, and then this is the pantry, if you remember in the plan. So we made all 3 of those windows the same to create kind of a rhythm of higher windows, eliminating the panels below. And then the second floor ended up being modified. We had to flip the master bedroom, which is in the back of the house. We had to flip the floor plan once we pushed in the front of the house when we took the bump off back here. So we ended up with the master bath and closet on the south side, and we really mimicked the windows from below above with transoms. So this is the master bath and the hall bath. to kind of organize that a little bit better and create a simple rhythm. The other change from here is that the back canopy is gone. And then we went through the style reference last time. I don't know if you'd like me to reiterate any of that, or if or not.
I think we're comfortable with that. We've seen these before, so thank you.
Okay.
So those are the changes. The remainder of
Great.
this presentation was just going through the comparative, you know,
Sure.
Foursquare.
Okay.
Having the new proposal
Okay.
versus the traditional Foursquare.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay. Now time for a staff report.
Thank you, Chairman King. The changes you see in your packet are directly responsive to the various points that the board raised at the last meeting. The front elevation and rear elevations were simplified. The north elevation, you talked about the box bay near the interior stairway, and there was a consensus among the board that that really added to the articulation of that elevation. The change to the chimney on that elevation has added a bit more detail, reduced the massing slightly. That also was a positive change and responsive to your comments. The windows on the south side were modified. They are, although there are some large voids, large solid wall areas on that south elevation, the windows really are consistent in size. They are properly aligned. And the lower part of the wall, below the first floor windows, we can certainly look at the landscape plan and assure that there's something a little bit heavier in that location to really soften that south elevation. From the staff perspective, again, this has been, the changes were directly responsive to your comments. There are findings in the staff report in support of the project and conditions of approval that really are the standard conditions, paying particular attention to the drainage, given the fact that this is a tight neighborhood, and to construction, parking, and staging. And we will work closely with the developer through that process, and we'll also work with our city engineer.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. Time for any questions or requests for clarification from the board to either staff or the petitioner. And Bob, maybe you want to start off with us if you have any?
I think they did a fantastic job listening to us and pulling everything together. It fits every single criteria I can think of under the code.
Okay. Michael, any
No
questions?
questions at this time, nope.
Okay. Ted, any questions?
First, I have to applaud you. I really couldn't be happier to see the plans that you've put together. I hope you're as happy with the outcome yourself. It's really a testament to your efforts to find the most optimal design. One point I did want to ask you to clarify. On the first floor rear elevation, did you bring that rear elevation in, or is it back? Is the original rear, before you had that bump, I guess what you're calling it, you consider it a bump out. Did you bring that wall in, or is that rear wall still where it is? And
It did move back slightly.
okay,
If you don't mind coming to the microphone, please, that'd be great, thanks.
Yes, it did move out slightly.
Okay.
We had to push the second floor out a little bit more. So we incorporated some more space all the way across on the first floor, less than the box bay was, but more than what was there in the
Okay.
main block of the house.
great.
So, yeah.
That's all. No issue with that. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Okay. Bruce, I know you weren't here at the last petition, but anything you want to ask?
No, I can only give, first impressions because I wasn't involved in any discussion that went around the first time. But I did do a drive-by, and I think I got a good sense of the feel for the neighborhood. And I think you did a very nice job of coming up with an overall design that's very complementary to the neighborhood and very respectful of the other designs that are in the area. And certainly the massing of the structure and in dealing with the size of that lot, which I'm sure was a little bit tricky to come up with something that had a nice presence without being overbearing. I think you did a very nice job. I think it's a very, very nice looking property.
I had a couple questions. The front entry door, Looks like you have a side light, I guess, on the north side of the door, but it doesn't look like you have a corresponding one to the south. I'm not sure if that's just the picture or not, and it seems a little unusual to have just one, adjacent window compared to the, two of them. Any thoughts on that?
For us.
Well,
It's not wide enough to have two in the entry.
would that be typical to have a single, though, or would it be better off just doing some of the molding, et cetera? I mean, that looks a little,
It's pretty common to have a single side light.
We do it quite a bit.
Sure. And there's no way to put the one on the right to the south side there. There's not room there to put that.
The entry hall is 5'6" wide.
Yeah, I can see you're trying to maximize the dining room area there. Okay. I was wondering if you might consider the garage. I don't know if you have a schematic of the garage you could bring up, but I noticed on the north elevation of the garage, you've got a window there, which is nice, kind of breaks up that exterior a little bit. And then on the south elevation, it's just the wall. And I'm just curious if you might consider putting a window in there as well, adding some natural light to the garage. And I'm particularly interested because the orientation of the garage, it kind of angles out towards the, you're going to have a little more exposure to your southern neighbor. And, that blank wall there, to have that broken up maybe with a window, I think might be a nice feature. Yeah, especially the south facade is where we were a little bit. You had those smaller transom windows, so you already have some expanse that hopefully landscape over, but this might break up that whole continuation as well with the window. Okay, great.
The garage is actually farther forward than it can be because of that tree. We wanted to allow at least 14 or 15 feet to protect the,
Sure.
the tree root zone. So yeah, we could add a window.
That'd be great. Okay. That's all I have. Any other questions?
Those are good ideas.
Okay. Okay, then. Anyone from the public wishing to ask any questions? Or have any input? No, seeing none? Anything else from the staff, Kathy, should be aware of? Okay. So, because that, time to bring it to internal board discussion and comment. And Bob, it sounds like you're supportive of the plan.
Yeah, it meets all the criteria.
Okay.
I like it. They did a good job.
Okay. Michael?
I'd like to thank the owner and the architect for being responsive to our comments. It's nicely done, and I think it's a nice project and be real nice in that neighborhood.
Okay, great. Ted?
Fully support.
Okay. Bruce?
Agreed.
Okay. I appreciate it as well, the direction, listening, and I think it's a nice product. It's going to be very fitting for that neighborhood. Great addition, and again, I think some landscaping along that southern side where we have some higher windows will be really nice, and that additional window. I think you're going to have a really nice project. We appreciate the efforts. That being said, do we have a motion here?
I'll move to approve the petition as submitted, based upon the staff report and all the recommendations within the staff report.
And then the two
Yeah, exactly. and
items,
two comments from the
landscaping
chair.
on the south side and the garage on
Yeah.
the south side of the, window on the
Exactly.
south side of the garage.
As incorporated.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? See none? Okay. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a consideration of a request for approval of a partial demolition and addition to the residence located at 290 Hilldale Place. The owner representative is Doug Pasma, architect.
Thank you. It's good to be here again. Do we need to switch? Screens here? When we presented earlier, a couple of months ago, there were several issues that we, talked about, and I'm hoping that tonight we'll kind of be on the same page with regard to kind of how we've kind of approached all 6 of those issues. I kind of listed all of those 6 issues that I have in front of you, but essentially, I just wanted to. Should I go through the site plan like we did before?
If there's, I think you're hitting the nail on the head in that we'd love to see what you've changed. So to the extent things have not changed, probably short.
That's fine.
Overview
Floor
that.
plans essentially have remained the same, and we've come up with some additional pictorials. One of the things that we talked about was the inclusion of a landscape plan. So I had our landscape architect deliver a landscape plan that essentially shows real attractive landscaping around the footprint of the house and the new addition in the back. All of the perimeter trees, the oak trees and maple trees in the front and in the back would remain. So the landscape plan was submitted with that extended drawing. The streetscape elevations essentially start to highlight one of the other issues that we talked about, which had to do with the roof lines and the dormers as they worked into this second floor addition. My neighbor's house, ranch to the west here, and our neighbors to the east with a 2-story gabled structure. And here is a streetscape elevation of the kind of a revised elevation of the 1-story addition that we're doing on our property. Main floor plan, again, like I said, essentially has kind of remained the same. And the second floor plan, we had quite a bit of discussion around how all of those dormers, and I'll kind of skip ahead to a rendering street elevation. Essentially what we were attempting at doing was to create some French kind of casement door openings with shuttered surrounds on each side of the existing 1-story ranch, and then the second floor and roof area of the residence would incorporate 6 dormers across the top. I did bring a massing model. Kathy, should I just run that by you?
That'd be great.
So just a massing model to show.
You'll actually need to set it there and then go back to the microphone so the TV audience can hear you.
Thanks. We had quite a bit of discussion about the original drawing, which showed essentially a gabled roof that went back to a single ridge line across the center of the house, and the dormers ended up being protruding quite a distance to the outside face of the elevation, which rendered the second floor plan with some long floor area. Let me just skip to the right slide here. The impact of the second floor plan at this point with the dormers elevating on the front side of the house, we had the dormers protruded quite a ways into the second floor plan. So with the revised roof section right now, which includes a kind of a modified gambrel, a mansard type of roof, we've taken back that area and made it fairly efficient on the second floor. So that would be one of the benefits of changing the roof section that we've talked about. We also discussed at length the idea of taking our garage door off the front here and taking it around the back of to the side east elevation of the building and entering the residence from the east. So on the site plan,
we're proposing to increase the landscape dimension along the side yard and along our neighbor's yard to 3 feet here. The dimension from their property line to our garage is about 20'3", and I'm showing an enlarged drawing that shows both cars with turning radiuses into that, which, in my opinion, works very well. We'll have to work to make sure that we're draining the water away from the garage and away from my neighbor's property as we kind of, deal with the driveway extension out to the existing driveway there. But I think the enlarged site plan there showing both cars entering and exiting the garage works with that 3-foot landscape buffer. The other issue that we dealt with was the front door and the we had a protruding limestone surround around this front door here. I think what I've done now is just made it very simple. I'm just using a simple limestone surround around the doorway with side lights and a transom light adjacent to those French casement windows there on the front, right in front of a very simple patio that steps down, one step down into the front yard and sidewalk that wraps into the driveway. So I think from a roof line standpoint and the impact of the size of the dormers and the amount of how the dormers protrude from the new gambrel roof section, I kind of feel like the house is now scaling and has a much better proportion with regard to what the impact of the dormer is on top of that existing main level. Then in the backyard, we introduced, in order to show, and I'll just skip ahead just real quickly here to show a section drawing of the new roof line from the front. So we've got kind of a mansard tipping up here. Here is the dormer off the front, and then it tips up to a small ridge point here and then tips into the back. And then what the rendering will show you in the backyard is how we've just introduced a couple of hip roofs adjacent to the kitchen and to the master bedroom area that flank each side of a shed dormer that encompasses those tall windows looking into the living room. So that would be a view from the backyard. The last issue, one of the last couple issues had to do with the elevations. Here's the street elevation as it relates to the rendering that you saw earlier. You can see the dotted in roof line of the existing house at about this point here. The rear elevation with that same gambrel roof and the hip extensions off the back, just kind of creating a local symmetry about the entire back elevation. And then I think there was commentary on the side, how we could try to make the side elevations a little bit more in character with what was going on the front street side elevation. So on the garage door side, here we have a carriage door elevation here with a casement window adjacent to the kitchen. And then on the west elevation, we've taken those two existing windows and dropped them down and shown shutters and kind of a casement opening there as well. The last issue was just a demolition drawing, which we included in the packet just to show the extent of demolition on the main level. The existing basement stays the way it is, it's unaffected. And the main level, has some demolition associated with it, certainly, but, is minimal to that extent. I think that covers the issues that we discussed in the first, in our first session. And I'll leave the renderings up for your comments.
Okay. Thank you very much. Kathy?
Thank you, Chairman King. This is one of those projects that really is difficult. It is difficult to take a simple ranch house and try and create something that really has architectural integrity. And I know Mr. Pasma has really worked on this since the last meeting and appreciate the changes. I think there still are some inconsistencies. And I think on this block, The addition, the expansion of a ranch house is very appropriate and has been done pretty successfully along this street. So I think that approach, I think the information that he provided on the demolition, I think it does justify that this is a partial demolition, but by doing only a partial demolition, that also presents some real challenges and limits. Because the existing walls are remaining, because you have that ranch-style house, the roof becomes very complex. And as Mr. Pasma noted, you have several different types of roof elements. He mentioned the gambrel, he mentioned the mansard elements, he mentioned hips on the back. So the roof takes on a very complex and really a very massive form. The dormers, modifying those so that they don't protrude as far into the interior certainly improves the interior space. But those dormers, as they're presented, at least from staff's perspective, the detailing on those is certainly not clear. The alignment and perhaps just the number of them. The entry, I think the modifications have improved the entry, reducing the limestone surround, but the entry itself takes on a bit of a contemporary feel with that flat front that maybe just doesn't remain consistent with that goal to try and move toward a French provincial style. The board at the last meeting did make a number of comments and raise concerns about the functionality of the garage on the east side. And certainly increasing the planting bed along that property line from 1.5 feet to 3 feet helps to address the drainage problem and provide some area for screening, but that also further tightens that turning radius. And we have had situations in the community where, although the owner who's making the changes is comfortable with that, it certainly causes problems down the road. So I think thinking about that a little bit further, from the staff perspective, we're not comfortable recommending approval. We believe there is some further work that needs to happen to bring this house more fully in line with the design guidelines. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Now, time for questions from the board to either petitioner or staff. And again, Bob, I'll start with you if you don't mind.
Not at all. No. Thank you, by the way, for taking the time, and the model looks great. I wish I could build stuff like that. Have you thought about squaring off the front? And the reason I'm saying is that I'm really having trouble with the entryway being notched into the building. And I even went back and I drove by your place again today, and I even went back to the old book and I tried to figure out, is there anything in here that I can make a suggestion on to kind of bring it into the French style? And I'm having a hard time with a couple different standards. There's an elevation standard under the code, and the way the scale is in proportion to the different elements, I'm just having difficulty with it. The way the fenestration works all the way around. The back, I must admit, in the rear, it's starting to look good, except for the dormers are too high up by the peaks. So I'm wondering if you can't bring that kind of a clean look to the front. And then on both sides, there's too much open space versus the individual elements. So the fenestration to me is a little bit off. And I was just wondering if there's any way to square off the building a little bit and make it more like a typical French provincial. I don't know if you put in a small footing that you can extend the front door to the front, vertical, I guess, linear, whatever. I'm just ranting. I'm having a hard time seeing how this fits with the French architectural style. And I personally think, which probably is irrelevant, but I personally think that driveway on the right is going to cause you trouble down the road when you're trying to sell that place. If you do, you might not. Somebody will eventually. I went back today just for that specific reason, was to see, man, can he do this? I don't know, with the big cars I got out today, those big Suburbans and stuff, there's no way they'll get that into your garage. But again, thank you. You're pulling it together.
So I guess maybe the question be the one question there I think you could address is
Yeah, the squaring up the front.
Yeah, in an effort to be able to do something new with the front door entrance itself, the adjacent windows, so that you're not encumbered by the existing footprint of the house, is what you're suggesting.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if you know the answer to that either.
Right. I can see I can see your point with trying to fill that in and then starting from scratch in the middle and trying to create, a bit of harmony in the middle of the elevation at that point.
Then it seemed like you could balance the windows and balance the dormers on more really like a classic French provincial. You could even probably get away with putting the garage door in the front too and just make it a nice garage door.
Right, because what we're being handed is the east protrusion is not as wide as the west side. So inherent in that is this inability to get this overall symmetry of the elevation locked in with, what appears to be local symmetry about one side of the house. So
You've done a fantastic job of trying to make it work. I just think
Right.
it's just under the criteria with all the different requirements, it's just not making it at this point. Well, something to think about.
One of the things that came up at the last meeting was the inconsistency with the eaves around the facades. Did you look at that at all, or were there any changes to that?
I looked at the eave elevations across the front, and when we played around with extending some of those eaves, the idea that the eaves didn't line up vertically, in my opinion, was kind of the wrong direction to go in terms of trying to, again, maintain this simple, perceived symmetry that yields a nice looking, elevation. So the idea that you would take the eave, for instance, over that old garage door and drop it down so you'd have the same degree, same amount of overhang at that point, that would have made the elevation itself, lean to the right, so to speak. We would have lost our obvious local symmetry at that point. So, I've generally been comfortable with the eaves as they are, maintaining the vertical dimension from grade on both sides of the house, as opposed to trying to maintain the overhang dimension and having the vertical dimension problem. So.
Okay, and then the points of discussion from the previous meeting, so the garage door relocation, what is that? Is there any change from that, or is that?
Well, in the existing residence, we have a garage door that's.
Going to the side load, I understand
Correct,
that.
yeah. Garage door currently.
And, the last time, there was a lot of concern from this group up here about how the functionality of that worked, and it seems like with the information we're provided with today, is that you have less room than you did at the previous meeting. Is that right, or is it still the same as what it was before?
No, it's about the same. What I've done is I've increased the landscape buffer so that we don't have drainage issues at that point.
So last
But
time we
the
had-
turning radiuses, the engineered turning radiuses that are shown on the enlarged site plan, have oversized vehicles making that turn.
So last time, there was an 18-inch landscape strip,
Correct.
and now there's a 3'4", so that comes out of the driveway, so it's a little bit tighter, or?
Right, and then I field measured the existing dimension and found out there was an additional 8 inches in that field dimension. So capitalizing on that, and again, really paying attention to turning radiuses that are given to you by, graphic standards and things like that. I'm comfortable that a Ford Explorer and oversized vehicles make it in that garage.
So what do you think you have there, a 17-foot apron maybe to get in and out? 16, 17?
Yes, but the tires at the turning radiuses come right up to the landscape buffer, to the low-lying landscape buffer, and the bumper itself kind of hangs over the landscaped area, so it didn't really affect the turning radius.
So you
The
need to
addition of
have,
the landscape buffer.
so the landscape buffer needs to be part of the turning radius. You need to be able to back over the top of that, or get a fender over it or whatever?
To some small extent, yes. And then we obviously, I think in the last iteration, we had the driveway extension so that a car could pull out back into the extension and drive out.
Okay.
So I mean, I've looked at those radiuses at large scale, and you know, obviously, if I wasn't comfortable with it, I wouldn't make the proposal. But
I can understand
Yeah.
that you'd be comfortable with it, but I think that the next person down the road, whether they don't realize it when they buy the house and then after they're in there for a couple months and say, this just doesn't work, now they come back to the city and say, you know what, I'd like to change this to a front load garage because the side load is just, doesn't work. And now then what do we do? A couple questions on the,
I admit
the
it's
build-
tight. I admit it's tight, and I think I said the same thing the last time. You know, living in Chicago with 16-foot alleys, door to door, and we're more than 4 feet more than that right now. I mean, it works. It just works. That's all I can say.
a couple questions on the image that you have up there. Last time you mentioned that the shutters would be a darker tone than the stucco, and this seems to be a different, is this more what you have in mind?
Yeah, just a lighter palette.
So this is more of a white shutter with a gray stucco.
Yes.
And then the sides of the dormers, is that stucco?
That would be stucco as well, yes.
And then,
And then we'd have molding and fascia material that would trim out the leading edge of the dormers.
and then are you still looking at the asphalt shingles?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all for now.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Ted?
Good evening. The first comment, you've added the graphics and the mass model. That certainly helps us understand your plan better. With that said, as Kathy mentioned, I can appreciate your efforts to try and fit a plan into the existing home and improve upon that. But there is a point that you're trying to make a lot work, and I wanted to come back to get a better understanding of other considerations you might have made to how else to address the roof between not only the first iteration that you shared with us, but other ones to help us understand what some of those other alternatives might have looked like. How critical is it for having the side load garage versus having it front loaded? If you can help me understand some of those matters would help me.
Well, I think you know, the first thing is you know, we were trying to, you know, stay within the spirit of the design guidelines. The idea that that's definitely a promoted thing, and I feel like it does enhance the value of a residence not to have a garage door in the front, and you know, we see that in our neighborhood as much as possible. So you know, I admit it's tight, but I certainly feel better about the, you know, the front elevation of the house without the garage, in this particular house, without the garage door there, than I do in maybe another kind of house. You know, the idea that we don't have a big garage door opening in you know, in an elevation like this, because you know, right now the elevation is horizontal. It's a horizontal building, and when you have a big two-stall opening there, it just accentuates the horizontal. Whereas I think in another house where you'd have some steeply pitched gabled roofs and things like that, that two-story or that two-stall garage door or two single garage doors don't play as much of an impact on the elevation as they would here. So again, I think those are the two thoughts that we had, that we were trying to maximize the value of the property, I think, by not having the garage door in the front and, you know, again, responding to the design guidelines. Yeah.
And in terms of alternative ways to handle the various roof lines that you're working with?
Yeah, and the thought where we went to the gambrel section right here, that again takes away the massive dormered image that we looked at in the last meeting, and kind of reduces the dormer to what it, you know, to what it wants to be, is something that articulates character, articulates a second floor scale, without being overwhelming and that kind of thing, and at the same time helps to yield a second floor plan that's a little bit more freed up than the last plan was. Originally, we essentially had our eave to ridge going here, and we had some a long expanse of dormer there that that is dramatically different at this point with this particular roof line.
Two more questions on your rear elevation, the color graphic that you showed. There appears to be some sort of large structure to the left. Is that a brick fireplace, or what exactly is that?
Yeah, no, that was kind of a future thought about showing some sort of outdoor cook area or grill area.
Is that part of this plan?
I know it's not right now. Right.
My other question, coming to your the front elevation, the material, it looks like there might be a limestone facade in that center section. Is
Correct.
that correct? Yeah. Okay.
That's flanked on each side with smooth face stucco.
Okay.
So it would be a flat limestone coursed 4-inch veneer.
Okay.
With the limestone surround around the front door.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Bruce, any questions?
Well, I have comments. Should I save those for a
Yeah,
comment
we
section?
will, if you have comments, we'll
Yep.
we'll tell me then, so.
No questions.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. The dormers in the front, are they, the spacing between them, I understand you've kind of got 3 pods, you got kind of a left, a center, then a right. Is the spacing within those pods the same? It's kind of tough. It looks like the ones to the left there, there's a wider spacing between those two than, and the other groupings between them?
That's correct. It's a little wider on this side. That's because I do have a larger footprint dimension underneath that. And it seemed to, again, from a spacing standpoint, it just seemed to be something that didn't impact the perceived symmetry of the elevation as much as if I were to take the left dormer, for instance, and slide it over so it was the same space here. That iteration looked obviously out of proportion with the whole elevation itself. So I did space the dormers here a little bit wider on the west side of the house.
Okay. Do you think you need 7 dormers on the front facade? Anything special about that, or could you go with
just
fewer than that?
The large areas adjacent to these windows here, and then we have that loft area and the second floor plan for the 3 windows there. It just seemed to make sense to have 2 dormers in each of those wings above, and then the 3 dormers in the center section of the house.
Okay. And then the
Windows actually don't end up being all that big. I mean, they've
been smaller size,
nice
yeah.
source of light into those spaces for sure. But the dormers have been reduced almost by 2/3 vertically.
What the architectural style? It said in your notes, I think it said French colonial elements here. Is that what styling are you really getting to here? What's the?
I think it's a colonial kind of a style in terms of how I'm going to detail the eaves, how we're detailing all of the dormer fascias, and how we're just looking at a real simple window opening with the adjacent shutters. I would say it's more in keeping with that style.
Okay. And then is that, are those typical elements to kind of mix the stucco and, I'm sorry, it's escaping me what your entryway is there, the limestone. Is it typical to have that mix of materials on a French colonial or no? Or?
I think so. I've seen that. And it's the only area where we're showing limestone is at the entrances. There's a few residences down on Green Bay that utilize that kind of stucco limestone kind of thing where they're playing up this real simple patio in the front of a very simple limestone elevation here. So it's in terms of a family of materials. It just seems like just an appropriate human-scaled approach for an elevation that, again, is long, not tall, and it's just trying to be what it is. So I think when it comes to materials, I'm not trying to play games with any kind of special ways of detailing. So I'm just trying to be straight up and honest about the openings, about the surfaces that were being handed, on the first floor. So.
And then could you put up the rear elevation again, please? The kind of this two-story element windows is going to be nice, all that natural light in the house. But again, is that in keeping of a French colonial, you think, or is that?
That's probably, an element there, that gets more into more of a shingle style house, or to that extent. But at the same time, shed dormers show up on all kinds of different residential styles, and the way the floor plan was developing, and the way we had a family room, living room showing up in the center of the plan, and the idea that we can get all kinds of light from this opening here, these openings on top, all the way back into that loft opposite those three dormers. It just made a lot of, aesthetic, design sense from a planning standpoint, and aesthetic sense from the outside as well.
And the chimney materials, what's that going to be comprised of? The chimney.
It would be a gray flagstone.
Gray flagstone. Okay. That's all I've got. Any additional questions, gentlemen? No? Okay, great. A chance for anyone from the public coming that would wish to testify, please come forward. Okay, seeing none. Anything additional, Kathy, from your end here? Okay. All right, seeing that, the end of the question period now goes to our internal board discussion and comment. I echo Kathy's sentiments that it's a difficult assignment, and appreciate your efforts to try to, get something that is in fitting with the neighborhood and with the architectural style. It's just much tougher not starting from scratch, and so we do appreciate the efforts and try to certainly change some things based upon our comments. So that's where I would start, and then I guess swing it back over to Bob. Get your thoughts, Bob.
Yeah, I think he's taking the best swing at it as he possibly can. I mean, but the problem is working off that old foundation and trying to keep, basically working off the old foundation. And I don't know if, the partial demo was a full demo, was a partial demo, was if he could square it off somehow. And, I was looking up the different French architectural styles, trying to figure out kind of some ideas. And it seems like what he's got here, just on the fenestration side alone, does not fit the criteria. But I think that he has the ability to do it by changing certain things. I just wish I knew what to tell him. I'm not an architect, so if it was me, I'd go get about 3 of my architect buddies together, sit them down with some beers, and have them all work on it for me. But as far as my opinion as it sits right now, it doesn't fit the criteria, the design review, so I can't support it.
Mike?
I think there was a lot of discussion at the last meeting, and it seems like a lot of these issues are still before us, and I don't think there's been a lot of movement on some of the issues, and I'm still having a hard time figuring out what the architectural style is and having it be true on all 4 facades. There's just a lot of inconsistencies as you go around the building, and I understand the difficulty with trying to redevelop on the existing foundation and all that, but I think that this needs further study based on the comments that we provided at the last meeting and as well as tonight.
Okay. Ted?
Without a doubt, having a side-loaded garage would be a preferable arrangement and creates a much cleaner front elevation. I don't disagree, but if you follow the adage of form follows function, trying to adopt a side-loaded garage to a property that's situated on its lot in a way that just doesn't support it, there's a point that it just doesn't make sense to try and make it work when when it really shouldn't. I mean, the house was designed and situated on the lot to be a front-loaded garage. I have a lot of trouble with it's a very complex roof structure that adds elements to, again, you can't distinguish what the style is you're trying to follow. And again, as my colleague said, if the answer was easy, you would have figured it out already. And I certainly don't suggest to have the answer on what makes that work better. All I can say is that what I'm seeing in front of me is something that it's still too complex and needs more refinement. And I urge you to sharpen that pencil back up and see what other alternatives you might be able to come up with.
Bruce?
I'm the new guy on the block here, and I'm certainly not a trained architect, so I'll take my comments in stride. Obviously, the balance here is the people who are living there want to be happy, right? And you are working against constraints, so we all appreciate that. So don't think that we're pretending that this is all easy work. I'll start with the back, and this may be against what our collective requirements are in terms of making comments. But given the fact that there are constraints here, I actually am okay with the back not being as true if we decided that this was a French old-style, 20s, 30s French colonial style property that you might see from the front. Mm-hmm. I think taking advantage of the lighting, the view to the yard, and making the home seem more expansive, I personally don't have a problem with that. I think that's an aesthetic decision that you have, and also it's a functional decision. So I would be less critical about the facade in the rear. But I have to say, and it's just, I do, knowing that once it's done, you live with it, I agree with everybody else that I think it's worth the extra work to revisit it, and I'll just make a comment on the things that I think are worth looking at. I think for its size, the amount of dormers make it look busy. And maybe in the spirit of trying to be symmetrical, there are French colonials that are not, they don't have to be that symmetrical. So I almost entertain, you could do, and again, I'm not an architect, but things that you could do. You're running a straight line on the dormers, and I think it draws greater attention to them. So you could actually step the dormers, so you could have the side dormers higher and the center set lower. One option, it doesn't have to be a lot, but it starts creating some movement in the roof line. That could help. Or maybe you can actually just reduce one and play around with the numbers that are there. If that's a lighting issue from the inside, I can respect that as a consideration. But I think it draws exceptional attention to the roof line unnecessarily, even though you've downsized them, and I think that is a nice improvement over what I saw as the original plan. The other is the step back to the entranceway. The model helps me a little bit better, and I understand the fact that the left side is bigger than the right side, and as I said, I don't have a problem with the fact that it's asymmetrical, but the cutout to the center, again, somehow draws attention to it in a way that I don't think it makes it as, and maybe quaint isn't what your goal is, but at least directionally, I think it's more what you want, and it literally just looks like, for whatever reason, it's just a straight cutout to create that section. And I don't know if it could bump out, could it have pillars? But I think somehow that needs to be softened. And again, I don't have a problem with the door to the left and the two windows, but somehow the way that it all jumps out at me and it just squares back, and hopefully it's constructive for the owners as well, I think it's worth the extra work there. I think there's a design there, and I apologize that I can't give you better ideas, but I think there's a design idea there that would make everybody actually say, I actually do like it better, for lack of better direction. I think that's worth the time and energy. And then, having lived through, I live in a home that has a decent-sized driveway, and after the 9,000 inches of snow that we had, you really do have to think through the fact that somebody's going to have to go back and shovel that, and when they shovel excessive snow, they're going to make mounds and mounds. So whatever you think is your clearance now will be gone in the winter. It doesn't mean that you can't just say, I can't get in the garage and park it out, but I do think it's something to consider. I I totally understand why you want to fight that aesthetically. I really do. I don't know if there's some engineering things that could be thought through that would reduce that issue. But again, I throw it out there for the people who are going to live there all seasons of the year and Chicago winters, to make sure you don't end up with something that say, you know, for the form and function comment that I say, I think I kind of regret the way this is dealing. You know, that we have to live with it, because most of the time in the winter with lots of snow, I can't even get in my garage, and it defeats the whole purpose of a garage, which is I don't have to slog around in the in the snow and rain and mud and all that kind of stuff. So that from my standpoint covers it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Bruce. I appreciate the comments, extensive comments. Yeah, I'm struggling with a couple different elements, and the roof line in particular, it just is rather complicated. I would say that I do appreciate the rear elevation with all the natural light, et cetera, but it is a purview of the board that we actually are, all 4 facades are supposed to adhere to the architectural elements that come under our guidelines. So personal preference is one thing, but actually adhering to our guidelines is another. So we are going to have to take the look at that element as well. Yeah, I'm not as concerned about the turning radius in that, it's a little bit of personal preference, and I think it is so valuable if you do want to go this route with this architectural style to get that garage around the back that I'm personally willing to say, if you're willing to try to turn in there, God bless you. It's probably going to be tight, but if this is truly the architectural style you want, it really, really helps if that garage is off to the side. So whatever we can shoehorn in there, I'm all for it. So the dormers, I agree. There's just too many of them, I think. I appreciate you downsizing them, but the overall number is, I just saw that and I thought it was a little too many. So that's really the comments I have. I appreciate the efforts here, not only this meeting and the previous meetings, trying to get to a nice design here. Kathy, you had suggested maybe a subcommittee might be appropriate for this project. After hearing these comments, I'm not sure if you still feel that way, or any thoughts, what would be the best way to kind of address this going forward?
The suggestion for a subcommittee really was in recognition that the petitioner, since the last meeting, has tried to respond to the comments, and I think I think this is one that would need to come back to the board, but perhaps just a single subcommittee meeting to discuss some ideas and concepts may be helpful if that's something the petitioner's interested in. And if it's something the board's interested in.
Okay. What do you think about that, guys? We haven't had a subcommittee in a while. Maybe you could explain that process. We've got some newer members that haven't actually partaken in that.
We do try not to use subcommittees often, and sometimes subcommittees are used when there is just 1 or 2 minor issues to be resolved, and the board actually moves through the project and gives the discretion to the subcommittee. In this case, it really is a project that I think is a really tough one. I think it is tough to take a ranch home and try and do what's being proposed here. And I guess the purpose of the subcommittee in this case certainly is to provide ideas and options, not to give any guarantees. The subcommittee cannot speak for the whole board, but just to help the petitioner think through. I think alternatively, Commissioner or Board Member Rita suggested that maybe even just consulting a few of your colleagues and getting a sense and so that would be another approach to actually have you kind of step back from the project and get some objective opinions. I think we all can get too close to a project and kind of have tunnel vision and not see a solution that really might be there. And we certainly know that ranch homes have been expanded in an appropriate way. Sometimes they can't be all that we might want them to be. Sometimes it does mean taking a step back. But that was my thought in the subcommittee. However, I think the idea of consulting your colleagues is also a good one too. So it's certainly the board's discretion which way to move on that one.
Okay, thanks. Any thoughts on that, guys? Do you think a subcommittee would work, or?
We're here to help. So.
We are here to help, certainly. We're here to serve. My one concern about a subcommittee is, I'll be honest with you, I think we've kind of aired our grievances. I don't want to call them grievances, but our concerns. I'm not sure that any of us are qualified to make, I mean, some of these issues like that roof line,
I agree.
I don't know what we're gonna,
We need someone who has a professional architect who's dealt with these solutions. And I personally would not feel qualified.
I just don't know if I could offer any commentary beyond what I've done here, so I feel like I create an extra process for you, and I don't know if it's helpful.
that's my concern as well, as I'm.
Get together with Kathy after the.
Okay, okay. I would say that also, Kathy, what's been helpful in the past is, at times, you've bounced off some ideas to either subcommittee or members saying, hey, this is a petitioner's thoughts, maybe on changing this or that, just to get some input. Like Bob said, we're here to help, and we really would like to see something that, pleases both the owner and the community, so.
And I think Kathy understands the issue. I mean, she readily identified everything that's of concern to us.
Yeah. So I guess maybe hold off on the subcommittee if we make further progress or petitioner really sees some real value that we're going to create knowing our backgrounds, we'd be happy to do it. But I think for now, again, it might be just a hindrance more than a help at this point. So with that being said, then I think probably just continue the petition, probably
That's a great
appropriate
idea.
action.
That's a great
Okay.
idea.
Okay.
So I'll move to continue the petition.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, nay? Okay. The petition is so moved. Thank you for your efforts. Next item on the agenda is the opportunity for the public, anyone from the public to come and address the board on any non-agenda items. Okay, seeing none. Additional information from the staff. There is a somewhat different board meeting schedule and location next time. Kathy, could you just reiterate what that is again, please?
Yes, I think your regularly scheduled meeting was on Lake Forest Day, and that's always a bad week, both the day before Lake Forest Day, and then the Thursday after Lake Forest Day. There is a teen court meeting here, and I don't have the date in front of me. Does anyone have the date of that meeting, of that Thursday?
That was the 7th?
Yeah, that was the
That's
seventh.
seventh, yeah.
So the next meeting, thank you, is August 7th, and it will be at the city's Municipal Services Building at 800 Field Drive. We will be in the lower level, and it's a one-time thing, but it allows us to get a meeting in that week, given that this room is occupied.
Okay, great. Anything else, Kathy?
Nothing.
Okay, great. I think then we can adjourn if we have movement.
I'll move to adjourn.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay, all in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.